A devastated elderly woman lay on the glass-covered cobblestones of the local farmer's market. A wealthy, arrogant woman had just slapped her across the face for simply asking for basic respect. The rich couple had carelessly crushed the older woman's small jam stall with their massive luxury SUV, completely convinced that their money made them untouchable. Dozens of people watched the heartless attack. Smartphones recorded every agonizing second. Yet, not a single person in the terrified crowd stepped forward to help. But the cruel billionaires had absolutely no idea who was walking into the square at that exact moment. They did not know the quiet man approaching them was an active-duty Navy SEAL, or that his highly trained military German shepherd was about to deliver swift, terrifying justice. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments which country you are watching from, and if you love stories that melt your heart, please subscribe to support our channel. The morning air in Charleston held a familiar, comforting warmth. The early sun climbed slowly above the historic brick rooftops, casting a bright golden glow over the cobblestone streets. Down at the local farmers' market, vendors moved with quiet, focused purpose. They set up their canvas tents and arranged their fresh goods hours before the weekend crowds arrived. Martha stood patiently behind her wooden folding table. She was a 70-year-old woman with a gentle face and bright silver hair tied back in a neat, tight bun. She wore a faded blue apron over a simple floral cotton dress. Her hands bore the undeniable marks of decades of hard work. The skin was thin and lightly spotted, but her fingers moved with practiced, steady skill. She carefully unpacked glass jars from a large cardboard box and placed them in perfectly aligned rows on the table. These were not just any regular jars from a factory. They held her famous, deeply loved homemade jams. There was sweet strawberry rhubarb, spiced peach, and wild blackberry. Each label was written in her own neat cursive handwriting. Martha took immense pride in her work. She spent long days picking the ripest fruits from local farms and hours stirring large metal pots in her small hot kitchen. The sweet scent of boiled sugar and fresh fruit always lingered on her clothes. "Good morning, Martha," a loud voice called out from the right. Martha looked up and smiled warmly. Tom, a tall man in his late 50s, wearing a worn straw hat, carried a heavy wooden crate of fresh green corn to his stall next door. He was a hard-working vegetable farmer who had shared the space next to her for over 5 years. "Good morning, Tom," Martha replied. Her voice was soft and carried the welcoming warmth of the southern sun. "It looks like a truly beautiful day for the market." "It sure does," Tom said. He set his heavy crate down on the ground and wiped sweat from his wrinkled forehead. "You look especially bright and happy today. Is there a special occasion we should celebrate?" Martha felt her heart skip a happy beat. A wide, genuine smile spread across her weathered face. Her eyes, a clear shade of bright hazel, sparkled with an excitement she could no longer hide. "Cole is coming home today," she said simply. Tom stopped arranging his corn completely and looked at her with pure, genuine joy. "Your boy? The Navy SEAL?" "Yes," Martha nodded. She smoothed the front of her blue apron with trembling hands. "He has been deployed overseas for over a year. He called me yesterday and told me his flight lands this morning. He said he will come straight here to the market to see me." "That is wonderful news, Martha," Tom smiled broadly. "I know exactly how much you miss him. He is a brave and good man." "Thank you, Tom. I baked his absolute favorite pecan pie last night. It is waiting for him on the kitchen counter at home." Martha turned back to her rows of jam. Just talking about Cole filled her chest with immense pride and a lingering trace of anxiety. Being the mother of an active-duty Navy SEAL was never an easy task. For many long months she lived alone with silent, heavy fears. She watched the evening news with a tight heart and prayed every single night for his safe return. She only knew he was doing dangerous, critical work far away from home. But today, the terrible waiting was finally over. Her brave son was returning to her arms. The market slowly came to life as the clock ticked. The quiet morning shifted into a bustling, vibrant scene. Large families strolled happily down the wide aisles. Young children laughed out loud and pointed at colorful displays of fresh-cut flowers. Dogs walked eagerly on tight leashes by their owners' sides, wagging their tails at the passing food stalls. A young local musician sat on a small wooden stool near the stone fountain and played a cheerful, upbeat tune on a battered acoustic guitar. The air quickly filled with the delicious smell of roasted peanuts, fresh brewed coffee, and the salty ocean breeze. Martha felt a deep, comforting sense of belonging right here. This crowded market was her true second home. She loved seeing the regular weekend customers who stopped by every single week just to buy a jar of peach jam and ask kindly about her health. She loved the tight community of local vendors who watched out for each other through rain and shine. Here, she felt completely safe and deeply respected by everyone. The sun climbed higher into the cloudless sky. The crowd grew thicker and louder. Martha wiped her sweating brow with a small white cloth and took a quick sip of cold water. She checked her silver wristwatch. It was almost 10 o'clock. Cole would be here very soon. She imagined him walking through the thick crowd in his crisp uniform, tall and strong. She imagined the tight, breathless hug he always gave her, lifting her slightly off the hard ground. Suddenly, a loud, piercing noise shattered the peaceful, happy atmosphere. Honk. The aggressive, angry blast of a car horn echoed sharply through the open square. The guitar musician stopped playing instantly. People turned their heads rapidly in confusion and growing alarm. Honk, honk. The sound was absolutely deafening. It came directly from the south entrance of the open market. This specific area was strictly a pedestrian zone on weekends. Heavy iron barricades usually blocked the surrounding streets to keep all vehicles completely out. A massive pitch-black luxury SUV pushed its way aggressively into the crowded walking area. The large engine roared with a deep, menacing growl. The shiny vehicle did not slow down at all. It rolled forward with violent intent, forcing a large group of startled teenagers to jump desperately out of the way. "Hey, you cannot drive here!" An angry man shouted loudly from the scattered crowd. The driver completely ignored him. The heavy SUV continued its slow, bullying path down the narrow walking aisle between the fragile vendor stalls. The thick tires crushed a dropped woven basket of red apples into the dirt. Terrified people grabbed their crying children and scrambled backward quickly, pressing themselves tightly against the wooden tables to avoid being hit by the metal beast. Martha stood completely frozen behind her small stall. The giant black vehicle was heading straight toward her specific section of the busy market. The dark tinted windows hid the people inside, giving the ruthless machine a cold, completely faceless appearance. The engine revved loudly once again. The driver clearly had zero intention of stopping or turning around. The large SUV angled sharply toward the side, the massive front metal grille pointing directly at Martha's fragile folding table. Martha gripped the hard edge of her table tightly. Her heart pounded violently against her ribs. The peaceful, happy morning had vanished in a terrifying instant, replaced entirely by a sudden and overwhelming sense of danger. She watched in absolute disbelief as the heavy spinning tires rolled closer and closer to her carefully arranged jars of homemade jam. The massive black SUV did not stop. It moved forward with a heavy, crunching sound. The thick front bumper slammed directly into the center of Martha's fragile wooden table. The impact was violent and sudden. The folding legs of the table snapped like dry twigs. The wooden planks splintered loudly. Dozens of glass jars slid off the slanted surface. They hit the hard cobblestone ground and shattered instantly. A terrible symphony of breaking glass echoed across the silent market. Thick, sweet jam exploded everywhere. Deep red strawberry, dark purple blackberry, and bright golden peach spread across the dirty stones. The carefully crafted labels, written by Martha's own patient hand, soaked up the sticky mess and tore apart. Martha stumbled backward in pure shock. She lost her balance and fell hard against a nearby wooden pillar. Her shoulder flared with a sudden, sharp pain. She gasped for air. Her heart hammered wildly against her ribs. She looked down at the ground. Weeks of patient labor, fresh fruits, and careful cooking lay completely ruined at her feet. The sweet smell of the jam mixed instantly with the foul odor of the vehicle's exhaust fumes. Tom rushed over immediately. He left his vegetable stall and grabbed Martha by the arm. He pulled her gently away from the sharp glass and the massive tires. "Martha, are you hurt?" Tom asked loudly. His face was pale with deep worry. Martha shook her head slowly. She could not find her words. She could only stare at the terrible wreckage. The crowd around them froze completely. Nobody stepped forward to help. People formed a wide circle around the chaotic scene. Several individuals pulled out their smartphones and started recording the incident. They whispered quietly to each other, but they kept a very safe distance. The heavy engine of the SUV finally cut off. The sudden silence in the square felt much heavier than the noise. The heavy driver's side door opened with a smooth click. A young man stepped out into the bright sunlight. He appeared to be in his early 30s. He had slicked back blonde hair and a sharp, arrogant jawline. He wore a tight, pristine white designer polo shirt and tailored beige trousers. A thick, heavy gold watch flashed brightly on his left wrist. He did not look around at the terrified crowd. He did not look at the broken table. He did not look at Martha at all. Instead, he walked straight to the front bumper of his massive vehicle. He crouched down and rubbed the shiny metal with his thumb. He inspected the dark paint for scratches. "Unbelievable," the man muttered angrily to himself. The passenger door opened next. A young woman stepped out carefully, avoiding the puddles of sticky jam. She was tall and slender. She wore a flowing white silk dress that touched her ankles. Large, dark designer sunglasses covered half of her face. She held a small, clearly expensive white leather purse tightly against her side. Her lips curled into a deep frown of absolute disgust. "Julian, I told you this was a bad idea," the woman said. Her voice was sharp and nasal. "This place is completely filthy. We should have parked at the hotel like normal people. Look at my shoes. They are dangerously close to this disgusting red mud." "It is not mud, Chloe," Julian replied. He stood up and wiped his thumb on a white cloth handkerchief. "Someone left their garbage right in the middle of the street. It completely ruined my morning." Martha finally found her breath. A sudden wave of heat rushed up her neck. She pushed past Tom and stepped closer to the wealthy couple. She kept her distance from the aggressive man, but she stood tall. "This is not garbage," Martha said. Her voice shook slightly, but it carried clearly across the quiet square. "And this is not a street. This is a pedestrian market. You ignored the barricades. You drove a heavy vehicle into a crowded area. You could have killed someone." Julian finally turned his head. He looked Martha up and down slowly. His eyes scanned her faded blue apron, her worn, comfortable shoes, and her silver hair. He let out a short, mocking laugh. "A pedestrian market?" Julian repeated. He gestured casually to the open space. "I pay more in local taxes in 1 month than this entire street makes in a full year. I drive exactly where I want to drive. You should be careful where you put your little folding table." "You destroyed my property," Martha said firmly. She pointed a shaking finger to the broken glass and the smashed wood. "I spent weeks making those jams. You need to apologize, and you need to pay for the damage you caused today." Chloe let out a loud, dramatic sigh. She stepped forward and stood next to her husband. She looked at Martha with a mixture of pity and intense irritation. "You people are always the exact same," Chloe said sharply. "Always looking for a quick payout, always standing in the way of progress and expecting a handout from successful people. It is pathetic." "I am not asking for a handout," Martha replied. Her hands balled into tight fists at her sides. "I am asking for basic respect and fair compensation for my ruined goods." Tom stepped forward, his face red with sudden anger. "Now, listen here," Tom shouted, pointing a thick, dirt-stained finger at Julian. "You cannot treat her like that. She is a respected member of this community." Julian stopped and turned his head slowly. He glared at Tom with cold, dead eyes. "Keep your mouth shut, farmer, unless you want me to buy your little vegetable stand and burn it to the ground just for fun. Know your place." Tom hesitated. He had a family to feed. He lowered his hand slowly and stepped back. The dark threat worked perfectly. The rest of the crowd caught the dangerous tone in Julian's voice. They shuffled even further away, gripping their phones tighter. Chloe shook her head. She opened her expensive white leather purse with a sharp click. She reached inside with two perfectly manicured fingers. She pulled out a single, crumpled $20 bill. She did not hand it to Martha. Instead, she lifted her hand and let the green paper drop casually to the ground. The bill fluttered down and landed directly in a sticky puddle of ruined blackberry jam. "There," Chloe said with a cold, cruel smile. "That should cover your cheap little jars. Buy yourself a new piece of wood. And next time, learn to stay out of the way of people who actually matter." Martha stared at the soiled bill on the ground. A heavy, suffocating knot formed in her throat. She had worked hard her entire life. She had raised a good son by herself. She had always treated people with kindness and true dignity. Now, standing in the middle of her beloved market, she felt completely small and powerless. She wished Cole was here. If Cole were standing beside her, these arrogant people would never dare to speak to her this way. The green paper bill lay flat against the wet cobblestones. Bright red strawberry jam slowly seeped into the edges of the $20 note. Martha stared at it. The cruel laughter of the wealthy couple rang in her ears. A heavy silence settled over the surrounding crowd. No one moved to pick up the money. No one stepped forward to defend her. The warm morning sun suddenly felt cold on her skin. Martha slowly lifted her gaze. She looked directly into Chloe's dark designer sunglasses. She did not cry. She did not tremble. She took a deep breath and squared her tired shoulders. "Pick it up," Martha said quietly. Chloe blinked. She let out a short, incredulous breath. "Excuse me?" "Pick up your money," Martha repeated. Her voice grew stronger. It carried a steady, undeniable authority. "I am not a beggar on the street. I do not want your loose change. You do not get to destroy my hard work and throw a dirty bill at my feet to feel better about yourselves." Julian scoffed loudly. He crossed his arms over his pristine white polo shirt. "Look at this. The old woman has some pride. You should take the money, lady. It is probably more than you make in a whole week selling this sticky garbage." Martha turned her attention to Julian. She looked at his expensive gold watch, his tailored clothes, and his arrogant posture. She felt a deep pity for a man who measured his entire worth in dollars. "This is not garbage," Martha stated firmly. She pointed down at the ruined jars. "Those are wild blackberries from the Thomas farm. I picked them myself at dawn on Tuesday. I stood in a boiling hot kitchen for 14 hours to cook them. I sterilized every glass jar. I wrote every single label by hand. This stall is my business. It is my livelihood. It requires sweat, patience, and absolute dedication. You drove your heavy machine through a restricted area and crushed it in 3 seconds." Julian smiled. It was a thin, terrible smile that did not reach his eyes. "And what is your point? Things break. Poor people lose things. That is the way the world works. You are standing in the way of a $100,000 vehicle. You are lucky we did not run you over completely." "I demand respect," Martha said. "I demand you apologize for your reckless behavior." Julian let out a loud, echoing laugh. He uncrossed his arms and took 2 aggressive steps forward. He invaded Martha's personal space. He loomed over her, trying to use his height and broad shoulders to intimidate the older woman. "Respect?" Julian whispered maliciously. "You want respect from me? Let me explain reality to you. I own a tech company in Silicon Valley. I have the mayor of this city on my speed dial. I have dinner with senators. I move millions of dollars before I even drink my morning coffee. You sell fruit in jars on the street. We do not belong to the same species." He leaned closer. His voice dropped to a cold, threatening hiss. "If you do not shut your mouth right now, I will make one phone call. I will buy this entire square. I will tear down these pathetic wooden stalls. I will turn this farmer's market into a parking lot. I will wipe your entire existence off the map just because you annoyed me today. Do you understand me?" Martha did not flinch. She stood her ground. Her chin remained high. Around them, the crowd of onlookers shifted uncomfortably. More people raised their smartphones. The small red lights of active video recordings blinked from every direction. Dozens of people watched the confrontation unfold. They saw a rich, powerful man threatening a harmless elderly vendor. Yet the fear of Julian's wealth and anger kept them completely paralyzed. They whispered to each other, but they offered no actual help. Martha looked around at the silent faces. She felt a sharp sting of disappointment, but she refused to let this arrogant man break her spirit. She thought of Cole. She thought of the immense courage her son showed every single day in the military. She would not act like a coward now. "Your money does not make you a man," Martha said, looking directly into Julian's eyes. "It only makes you a bully with a big bank account. You have absolutely no class and no basic human decency." The words hit their mark. Julian's arrogant smile vanished instantly. His face flushed a dark, angry red. His hands balled into tight fists. He was not used to people talking back to him. He was used to people bowing their heads and taking his abuse. Chloe saw her husband's anger. She stepped forward quickly. Her face twisted into an ugly mask of pure rage. She pulled off her large sunglasses, revealing sharp, furious eyes. "How dare you speak to my husband that way?" Chloe shrieked. Her high-pitched voice echoed violently against the brick buildings. "You are nothing. You are a pathetic, filthy old woman." "I am telling the truth," Martha replied calmly. That calm response was the absolute final trigger. Chloe lost complete control of her temper. She raised her right hand high in the air. The heavy diamond rings on her fingers flashed brightly in the morning sunlight. She swung her arm down with all her strength. The slap sounded like a gunshot in the quiet market. The open palm struck Martha hard across the left side of her face. The sheer force of the blow snapped the older woman's head sharply to the side. Martha gasped in sudden shock and intense pain. She lost her footing on the slick, jam-covered cobblestones. Her arms flailed wildly in the empty air as she tried to catch herself. She fell backward. She crashed heavily onto the hard ground. She landed directly in the middle of the broken glass. Sharp shards sliced into the palms of her hands. The thick, sticky fruit covered her faded blue apron. A bright red mark bloomed instantly on her pale cheek, growing darker by the second. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Someone finally screamed. Several people took a step forward, but they froze again when Julian glared violently at them. Chloe stood over Martha, breathing heavily. Her chest heaved up and down. She looked down at the fallen woman with absolute contempt. She did not show a single ounce of regret. Martha lay on the ground. Her head spun wildly. The metallic taste of blood filled her mouth. The sharp pain in her hands burned fiercely. She closed her eyes tightly, trying to stop the world from spinning. She felt completely alone. But she was not alone. 2 blocks away from the main square, Cole walked with a steady, measured pace. He wore casual clothes, just a simple dark green t-shirt and faded blue jeans. However, his posture immediately gave away his strict military background. His back was perfectly straight. His broad shoulders were relaxed, but constantly ready for action. His dark eyes scanned the environment, taking in every small detail of the busy morning street. He had spent the last 12 months deployed in highly dangerous combat zones. Now he was finally home on a much-needed leave. Walking perfectly at his left side was Ranger. Ranger was a large, powerfully built German shepherd. He was a highly trained military working dog. His thick coat was a beautiful mix of deep black and rich tan. He wore a heavy tactical harness around his chest. Ranger did not pull on his leash. He moved in perfect synchronization with Cole. His sharp ears twitched at the sounds of the bustling city, but his absolute focus remained entirely on his handler. The bond between the man and the dog was unbreakable. They had saved each other's lives multiple times overseas. Cole held a cardboard tray with 2 large cups of black coffee in his right hand. He had stopped at a small local cafe near the edge of the market. He knew his mother loved a hot cup of coffee in the mid-morning. He pictured her gentle face. He imagined her bright, happy smile when she finally saw him. He had not told her the exact time his flight landed. He wanted to surprise her, right at her favorite place in the entire world. As Cole approached the south entrance of the pedestrian market, his sharp senses picked up a sudden shift in the atmosphere. The normal, happy sounds of the weekend crowd had vanished completely. Instead, he heard an unnatural, tense silence. He heard the low, anxious whispers of a large group of people. Ranger sensed the rapid change instantly. The dog let out a very low, quiet rumble deep in his chest. His walking pace quickened slightly. "Easy, Ranger," Cole said softly. Cole turned the final corner and entered the main open square. His eyes immediately locked onto a massive black SUV parked aggressively in the middle of the restricted walking area. He saw a dense crowd of people forming a wide circle. Nobody was moving. Everyone stared fearfully at the center of the circle. Cole felt a sudden cold spike of adrenaline in his veins. His intense military training took over immediately. He assessed the threat level. He pushed his way through the thick wall of onlookers. The crowd parted quickly when they saw the tall, stern man and the large, intimidating dog. Cole stepped into the open space. The chaotic scene in front of him registered in his mind in a fraction of a second. He saw the violently shattered wooden table. He saw the broken glass jars and the bright red jam smeared across the cobblestones like blood. And then he saw her. Martha lay on the hard ground. Her faded blue apron was covered in dirt and sticky fruit. She looked incredibly small and fragile among the terrible wreckage. Cole's heart stopped. The cardboard tray slipped entirely from his grip. The 2 cups of coffee hit the ground and burst open. Dark liquid splashed violently across his heavy boots. He did not care at all. He let go of Ranger's leash and sprinted forward. "Mom!" Cole yelled loudly. He dropped to his knees right beside her. The sharp pieces of broken glass dug into the fabric of his jeans, but he ignored the pain. He reached out and gently took her shaking shoulders. "Mom, look at me," Cole said. His voice was tight with sudden, overwhelming fear. "Are you okay? Where are you hurt?" Martha opened her eyes slowly. She blinked away the heavy dizziness. She looked at the strong, familiar face of her son. A fresh tear slid slowly down her cheek. "Cole," she whispered. Her voice was weak and trembling. "You came." "I am right here," Cole said gently. He carefully helped her sit up. He checked her arms and her neck for severe injuries. Then he saw it, the bright, angry red mark covering the entire left side of her face. It was the undeniable shape of a violent open hand. Someone had hit her. Someone had struck his elderly mother hard enough to knock her entirely to the ground. Cole felt a dark, terrifying rage ignite deep inside his chest. It was a cold, highly focused anger that he usually reserved for his worst enemies on the battlefield. He looked down at Martha's hands. They were covered in small, bleeding cuts from the broken glass. "Who did this?" Cole asked. His voice dropped to a low, dangerous whisper. Martha hesitated. She looked up fearfully at the 2 people standing just a few feet away. Cole followed her gaze. He slowly turned his head. He saw Julian and Chloe. The wealthy man was standing with his arms crossed, looking slightly annoyed. The woman in the white silk dress was glaring down at them with absolute disgust, actively rubbing her right hand. Ranger moved forward quickly and stood defensively in front of Martha. The large German shepherd let out a deep, menacing growl. The dog bared his sharp white teeth. He recognized the immediate physical threat to his pack. Cole stood up slowly. He placed himself directly between his mother and the wealthy couple. He stood at his full height. His broad shoulders completely blocked Martha from their cruel view. The air in the market seemed to freeze entirely. The temperature plummeted. The crowd held its collective breath in pure anticipation. Cole looked at Julian. Then he looked at Chloe. His eyes were completely devoid of any warmth or mercy. They were the cold eyes of a highly trained soldier who had just found his designated target. "Did you touch my mother?" Cole asked. His voice was completely flat. It carried no emotion at all, which made it far more terrifying than a loud shout. Julian uncrossed his arms. He stood a little taller, trying desperately to regain his arrogant posture. He sneered at the tall man in the cheap t-shirt. "Your mother?" Julian scoffed loudly. "So you are the son of this crazy old woman. You should teach her some basic manners. She attacked my vehicle, and then she started insulting my wife. She got exactly what she deserved." Chloe crossed her thin arms. "She is a filthy beggar. You need to take her and that ugly dog out of my sight right now before I call the police." Cole did not blink. He did not raise his voice. He took one single, deliberate step forward. The physical movement was incredibly smooth and predatory. "I am going to ask you one more time," Cole said softly. The crowd at the front edges actually took a frightened step back. "Did you put your hands on my mother?" Julian felt a sudden, strange flicker of genuine fear in his stomach. The man standing in front of him did not look like a normal citizen. The man looked like a deadly weapon ready to fire. But Julian was too proud and too arrogant to back down in front of a large crowd. "I did," Chloe snapped angrily, stepping quickly in front of her husband. "I slapped her, and I will do it again if she does not shut her mouth." Cole stared at her. The silence stretched for an agonizing moment. The tension in the square became completely unbearable. The soldier had confirmed the enemy. Now the rules of engagement had changed entirely. The silence in the market hung heavy and thick. Cole stared directly at Chloe. She had just proudly admitted to striking his mother. The confession hung in the warm morning air. Cole did not yell. He did not scream. His absolute stillness was far more dangerous than any loud threat. Julian watched the exchange closely. His face burned with a sudden overwhelming heat. He felt completely humiliated. This stranger in cheap denim jeans and a simple t-shirt was commanding the entire square. The surrounding crowd was watching them intently. Julian could not allow this blatant disrespect to continue. He had built his entire successful life on intimidating others and getting exactly what he wanted. He needed to reassert his dominance right now. Julian took another aggressive step forward. He closed the physical distance between himself and Cole. He puffed out his chest, trying to look much larger than he actually was. He pointed a perfectly manicured finger directly at Cole's face. "Listen to me, you piece of trash!" Julian spat. Small drops of saliva flew from his mouth. "You do not talk to my wife that way. You do not talk to me that way. Do you have any idea who I am? I can destroy your entire pathetic life with one single phone call." Cole looked down at the pointing finger. He analyzed the physical distance, the sharp angle, and the angry man's shifting weight. His brain automatically calculated the exact amount of force required to snap Julian's wrist. It would take less than 1 second. The urge to neutralize the active threat burned fiercely inside him. He saw the red handprint on his mother's face in his peripheral vision. The anger roared loudly in his ears. But Cole was a highly trained Navy SEAL. He was not a street brawler. He had spent years mastering his own mind and body under the most extreme conditions on the planet. He lived by a strict, unbreakable code of military discipline. He knew the strict rules of engagement regarding ordinary civilians. He could not throw the first strike. He could not unleash his lethal combat training on a spoiled, arrogant man unless his life or his mother's life was in immediate, undeniable danger. So, Cole did nothing. He stood completely still. He slowed his breathing. He locked his jaw. He anchored his heavy tactical boots to the cobblestones and became a solid wall of muscle and bone. He let Julian's loud insults wash over him like dirty water. "You are nothing," Julian continued loudly, growing bolder because Cole did not react. "You and your filthy mother belong in the gutter. You are just a loudmouth with a scary dog, but you do not scare me. I own people like you. I buy and sell people like you every single day." Julian expected the tall man to cower. He expected a frightened apology. But Cole simply stared at him with those cold, empty eyes. The total lack of fear enraged Julian even more. His immense pride completely blinded his basic common sense. He made a terrible, life-altering decision. Julian shifted his weight to his back foot. He pulled his right arm back. He clenched his fist tightly and swung a wild, angry punch aimed directly at Cole's jaw. Cole saw the clumsy punch coming a mile away. The movement was incredibly slow compared to the trained enemy fighters he faced overseas. Cole did not even flinch. He prepared to slip his head to the left and deflect the incoming blow. He never got the chance. Ranger had watched the entire heated confrontation with hyper-focused attention. The military working dog understood human aggression perfectly. He read the rising tension in his handler's body. He saw the aggressive, threatening posture of the shouting man. When Julian pulled his arm back to strike, Ranger identified an active, physical threat to his pack leader. The smart dog did not need a verbal command. His intense training took over instantly. Before Julian's fist could travel halfway to its target, a blur of black and tan fur launched high into the air. Ranger moved with terrifying speed and explosive power. He did not bite. He did not use his sharp teeth. He used the sheer, raw momentum of his heavy, muscular body. The large German shepherd slammed his broad, powerful chest directly into Julian's torso. The physical impact sounded like a heavy sack of wet sand hitting a solid brick wall. All the air left Julian's lungs in a loud, painful gasp. The wild punch missed completely. Julian's feet left the ground. He flew backward through the air and crashed violently onto the hard, sticky cobblestones. Before Julian could even understand what happened, Ranger was fully on top of him. The dog pinned the wealthy man flat on his back. Ranger planted his two heavy front paws firmly on Julian's chest, pressing him down with immense, crushing force. The dog lowered his large head until his wet snout was only an inch away from Julian's terrified face. Ranger pulled his dark lips back, exposing 2 rows of sharp, gleaming white teeth. He let out a deep, earth-shaking snarl that vibrated right through Julian's bones. Julian froze completely. His eyes widened in absolute, primal terror. He stopped breathing. He did not dare to move a single muscle. The heavy gold watch on his wrist scraped uselessly against the dirt. His pristine white designer shirt was soaked in crushed blackberries and brown mud. The arrogant, powerful billionaire was now entirely at the mercy of a highly trained animal. Chloe screamed in pure horror. She dropped her expensive white leather purse and covered her open mouth with both hands. She took 3 rapid steps backward, absolutely terrified that the massive beast would turn on her next. The surrounding crowd erupted in a mixture of loud gasps and shocked murmurs. Several people actually cheered quietly. The rapid, violent turn of events left everyone completely stunned. Cole remained exactly where he stood. He looked down at the pathetic man pinned to the ground by his loyal dog. He did not smile. He simply watched Julian tremble in genuine fear. The wealthy man had wanted to show everyone his great power. Now he was experiencing true, undeniable dominance. "Ranger," Cole said. His voice was calm and incredibly steady. "Hold." Ranger stopped snarling immediately, but he did not move an inch. He kept his heavy paws planted firmly on Julian's chest. He kept his sharp eyes locked directly on the man's terrified face, waiting patiently for the slightest excuse to act. Julian whimpered softly. The cold, hard reality of his situation finally crushed his massive ego. He was not in a comfortable boardroom. He was not safely behind a heavy wooden desk. He was lying in the dirty street, completely powerless and entirely humiliated. Julian lay perfectly still beneath the massive weight of the German shepherd. His heart hammered wildly against his ribs. Every single breath he took felt shallow and incredibly difficult. Ranger kept his heavy front paws firmly planted on the man's chest. The dog did not blink. His dark, intelligent eyes tracked every tiny movement Julian made. A low, continuous rumble vibrated deep within the dog's throat. It was a clear, unmistakable warning not to move a single muscle. Chloe finally broke the tense silence. She stood a few feet away, her hands trembling violently. Her face twisted into an ugly mask of pure panic and fury. She pointed a shaking finger directly at Cole. "Help!" Chloe screamed at the top of her lungs. "Somebody call the police right now! These people are trying to kill my husband!" Her shrill voice echoed loudly across the cobblestone square. The large crowd of onlookers murmured anxiously. Several people held their smartphones high in the air, recording every single second of the chaotic scene. No one stepped forward to help the wealthy couple. They had all seen Chloe slap the elderly woman just moments before. They felt absolutely no sympathy for the arrogant pair. Cole ignored the screaming woman completely. He kept his cold eyes locked on Julian for another brief moment, ensuring the physical threat was fully neutralized. Then he turned his back on the pinned man. He knelt down carefully beside his mother. "Are you okay, Mom?" Cole asked softly. His voice was steady and deeply reassuring. Martha nodded slowly. She leaned on her son's strong arm and carefully stood up. Her knees shook slightly, but she found her balance. She looked at Julian lying helplessly in the dirt and then looked up at her tall son. "I am all right, Cole," Martha whispered. "But please, do not let this escalate further. They are very angry, dangerous people." "I have it under control," Cole replied. He gently brushed some dirt and sticky jam from her faded blue apron. He checked her face again. The red handprint made his blood boil, but he kept his emotions locked away tightly. Chloe saw them standing together peacefully. Her fear quickly transformed back into explosive, arrogant rage. She stomped her expensive designer heel aggressively on the hard ground. "You are going to federal prison for this!" Chloe yelled loudly. She frantically dug into her white leather purse and pulled out her smartphone. "You are nothing but violent street thugs. I am calling the police right now. I am calling the mayor. I am going to make sure you are locked up for the rest of your miserable lives." Cole turned slowly to face her. His completely calm demeanor infuriated her even more. She wanted him to beg. She wanted him to panic. "Go ahead and call them," Cole said simply. "Your husband swung his fist first. My dog simply defended his handler. There are dozens of witnesses standing right here who saw exactly what happened from the very beginning." "Witnesses?" Chloe scoffed aggressively. She waved her hand dismissively at the silent crowd. "These people are absolute nobodies. Their words mean nothing at all. We have real money. We have real power. We know the important people who actually run this city. By the time I am finished with you, you will have absolutely nothing left to your name." Julian found a tiny fraction of his courage. He shifted his head slightly beneath Ranger's heavy paws. "She is entirely right," Julian spat, his voice shaking with fear and anger. "You made a huge mistake today, buddy. I am going to buy this entire pathetic market. I will buy the very ground you are standing on. I will demolish every single wooden stall. I will personally make sure your mother dies homeless on the street." The cruel threat hung heavy in the air. Martha gasped softly and gripped Cole's arm tightly. The idea of losing her beloved market terrified her. It was her community. It was her second family. Cole felt a fresh, intense surge of anger, but he kept his face completely blank. He looked down at Julian with absolute disgust. "You talk entirely too much," Cole said flatly. In the distance, the sharp wail of police sirens cut through the sunny morning air. The sound grew louder and closer very quickly. Someone in the crowd had already called emergency services when the vehicle crashed. Chloe smiled triumphantly. She pointed her expensive phone at Cole like a loaded weapon. "Do you hear that? That is the sound of your life ending today. They are going to arrest you for aggravated assault, and they are going to put that dangerous, vicious dog down permanently." Two white police cruisers with flashing red and blue lights pulled sharply into the pedestrian square. They bypassed the heavy iron barricades and parked quickly near the smashed wooden table. The heavy doors swung open. 4 police officers stepped out rapidly. They immediately placed their hands near their duty belts, assessing the highly tense and chaotic situation. A tall, broad-shouldered officer with graying hair took the lead. He was Captain Miller, a highly respected veteran of the local police force. He had a stern face and sharp, observant eyes. He looked at the broken glass, the ruined fruit smeared on the ground, and finally locked his intense gaze on the massive dog pinning a wealthy man to the dirt. "Everybody freeze right now," Captain Miller shouted loudly. His deep voice commanded instant respect and obedience. "Control that animal immediately, or we will use lethal force." Cole did not hesitate for a fraction of a second. He respected the chain of command above all else. He looked directly at his dog. "Ranger, heel!" Cole commanded sharply. Ranger stopped growling instantly. He lifted his heavy paws off Julian's chest without a single complaint. He stepped back quickly and returned directly to Cole's left side. The large dog sat down in a perfect, highly disciplined posture, ready for his next order. Julian gasped loudly for fresh air. He scrambled to his feet in a blind panic. His pristine white polo shirt was completely ruined, covered in dark mud and sticky wild blackberry jam. He ran frantically toward the police officers, hiding cowardly behind their blue uniforms. "Arrest him!" Julian yelled, pointing a shaking finger at Cole. "Arrest that man immediately! He ordered his vicious dog to attack me. He is a violent maniac. He tried to kill me in broad daylight." Chloe rushed to her husband's side. She grabbed Captain Miller's arm tightly. "You need to shoot that dangerous dog right now. It is a rabid beast. And put heavy handcuffs on that man. Do you know who we are? My husband is Julian Vance. We are close personal friends with the mayor of this city." Captain Miller gently but firmly removed Chloe's hand from his uniform. He looked at the frantic, screaming couple, and then he looked closely at Cole. Cole stood completely still. He kept his hands visible and empty at his sides. He did not shout back. He did not try to defend himself with loud, frantic words. He waited patiently and respectfully for the officers to assess the scene properly. Ranger sat quietly beside him, completely unbothered by the screaming people. "Sir," Captain Miller said, walking slowly and cautiously toward Cole, "I need you to step away from the woman and keep your hands exactly where I can see them." "I am completely unarmed, officer," Cole replied calmly. He took one single step forward, placing himself safely between the police and his mother. "My dog and I are fully compliant with your orders." Julian laughed loudly, a hysterical sound of pure relief and extreme arrogance. "Compliant? You're going to rot in a dark jail cell forever. I want him arrested for attempted murder right now, and I want that animal destroyed immediately. Do your jobs, officers, before I make a phone call and have all your badges taken away." The officers formed a loose half-circle around Cole and Martha. The tension in the market reached its absolute peak. The wealthy couple stood safely behind the police, smiling cruelly. They fully believed that their money and their loud threats had already won the battle. They believed they owned the city. They believed they owned the law itself. They had absolutely no idea what was about to happen next. Captain Miller signaled for his officers to stand down. He noticed the calm discipline in the young man standing before him. The large dog sat perfectly still at the man's side, displaying a level of rigorous training rarely seen in civilian pets. The chaotic shouting of the wealthy couple contrasted sharply with the steady silence of the young man. "I need to see your official identification, son," Captain Miller said. He kept his voice steady, but strictly authoritative. "Yes, sir," Cole replied immediately. He reached slowly into his back pocket. He kept his physical movements smooth and fully visible to avoid startling the highly tense police officers. He pulled out a small black leather wallet. He extracted a thick plastic card and handed it directly to the captain. Captain Miller took the card. He looked at the photograph, read the printed name, and then saw the official Department of Defense seal. His eyes widened slightly in surprise. He looked up at Cole. His posture shifted instantly from defensive suspicion to professional respect. "You are an active-duty Navy SEAL," Captain Miller stated. It was not a question. "Yes, sir," Cole answered clearly. "I am currently on authorized military leave. I just returned home to the city this morning. I came directly here to the market to see my mother." Julian pushed his way violently past the two younger officers. His face was dark red with intense frustration. "I do not care if he is the president of the country. He assaulted me. His vicious dog attacked me. Look at my expensive clothes. Arrest him right now, or I will have your job by tomorrow morning." Captain Miller turned slowly to face Julian. The respect he showed Cole completely vanished, replaced by cold professional irritation. "Sir, you need to step back and lower your voice immediately. We have dozens of independent witnesses standing right here. Several people have already shown my officers clear video footage of the entire incident." The captain pointed to a younger female officer holding a smartphone. "The video evidence clearly shows your wife striking this elderly woman in the face without any physical provocation. It also shows you attempting to punch this young man first. The dog reacted purely defensively to protect his handler. Under the law, that is not an unprovoked animal attack. That is self-defense." Chloe gasped loudly. She grabbed her white leather purse tightly. "That is absolutely ridiculous. We are the victims here. My husband is a very powerful man. He promised to buy this dirty market today and tear it all to the ground. You cannot protect these filthy people forever." Cole turned to face the angry couple. His face remained calm, but a small, sharp smile touched the corners of his mouth. "You cannot buy this market," Cole said quietly. Julian scoffed. He crossed his arms over his ruined white shirt. "Watch me do it. I will make a phone call right now. I will double whatever the city asks for the land." Cole knelt down slowly on the cobblestones. He unzipped his dark green canvas military backpack. He reached inside and pulled out a thick, sealed manila folder. He stood back up and handed the heavy folder directly to Captain Miller. "Captain," Cole said respectfully, "could you please open that and read the first page of that legal document out loud?" Captain Miller opened the folder. He scanned the dense legal text. A look of genuine shock crossed his weathered face. He cleared his throat loudly. "This document is a finalized deed of sale," Captain Miller read loudly, making sure his deep voice carried across the quiet, listening square. "It legally transfers full and absolute ownership of the Charleston Historic Farmers Market Square. The new sole legal owner is Cole Harrison." A massive wave of shocked whispers rolled rapidly through the large crowd. Tom, the vegetable farmer, dropped a fresh ear of green corn in pure disbelief. Martha looked at her tall son with wide, tear-filled eyes. She placed a trembling hand over her mouth. She had absolutely no idea about this. Julian stood completely frozen in his tracks. His jaw dropped open. "That is mathematically impossible. A common soldier cannot afford this prime commercial land. This is a multi-million-dollar property." "I saved every single paycheck," Cole explained calmly. His voice remained steady and loud enough for the entire crowd to hear the truth. "I spent the last 10 years deploying to the most dangerous combat zones on Earth. I did not buy fancy sports cars. I did not buy expensive gold watches. I saved my hazard pay. I bought this land quietly last month through a private broker. I wanted to make sure my mother always had a safe, permanent place to sell her homemade jam. I wanted to make sure no greedy, arrogant person could ever push her out of her home." The crowd erupted instantly. People clapped their hands and cheered loudly. The local vendors smiled widely and hugged each other. The terrifying threat of losing their livelihood disappeared completely into the morning air. Julian's face turned entirely pale. His ultimate weapon, his massive wealth, had just been rendered completely useless. He did not own the ground he stood on. The quiet man he just insulted owned it. "So," Cole continued, stepping one pace closer to Julian, "you are currently standing on my private property. You drove your heavy vehicle into a restricted pedestrian zone on my private property. You completely destroyed my mother's table. And your wife violently assaulted my mother. I want you off my land right now." Chloe grabbed Julian's arm frantically. "Julian, do something. Call the mayor. Fix this right now." But Julian had absolutely nothing left to say. He realized he had lost the battle completely. The police officers were firmly against him. The large crowd hated him, and the calm soldier in front of him held all the true power. "We are leaving," Julian muttered angrily. He turned quickly toward his black SUV. "Come on, Chloe. This pathetic place is not worth our time." "Hold on!" Captain Miller interrupted sharply. He stepped forward and blocked their path. "You are not leaving yet. We still need to process the formal criminal assault charges against your wife." As the police officers moved forward with handcuffs to detain Chloe, a sudden, sharp noise cut through the cheering crowd. Everyone turned their heads. Ranger had broken his strict heel position. The massive German shepherd walked purposefully away from Cole's side. The dog completely ignored the loud crowd and the approaching police officers. He walked directly toward the rear of the black luxury SUV. Ranger stopped abruptly at the heavy rear bumper. He pressed his wet black nose against the dark metal seam of the closed trunk. He sniffed loudly and rapidly, his ears pinned back in absolute concentration. Then Ranger sat down sharply on the cobblestones. He looked back at Cole and let out 3 loud, piercing barks. He pawed exactly once at the metal trunk lid and sat completely still, staring intensely at the vehicle. The cheering crowd fell entirely silent again. The police officers stopped moving and exchanged highly confused looks. Cole felt a sudden cold chill run down his spine. He knew exactly what that specific physical posture meant. He had trained Ranger for hundreds of grueling hours to perform that exact tactical sequence overseas. Captain Miller looked closely at Cole. "What exactly is your dog doing, son?" "Captain," Cole said, his voice turning deadly serious. "Ranger is a highly certified military working dog. He specializes in advanced narcotics detection. That specific sight and bark is his final trained alert posture." Cole raised his arm and pointed a steady finger directly at the black SUV. "He just found something highly illegal hidden in the back of that vehicle." Captain Miller stared at the massive German shepherd. A certified military working dog alerting to a vehicle provided immediate probable cause under the law. The captain looked back at Julian. The wealthy man had lost all the color in his face. He looked like a pale ghost. Chloe stopped screaming entirely. She looked completely confused and terrified. "Officer Davis," Captain Miller ordered his younger partner, "get the keys from Mr. Vance. Open the back of that vehicle." Julian took a rapid step back. He shook his head wildly. "No, you do not have a warrant. You cannot search my private property. This is a complete violation of my rights." Captain Miller remained perfectly calm and steady. "I do not need a warrant, sir. An active alert from a trained narcotics detection dog provides clear legal grounds for an immediate search. Hand over the keys right now, or we will break your windows and forcibly enter the vehicle." Julian trembled violently. He reached a shaking hand into his ruined beige trousers. He pulled out a sleek black electronic key fob. He handed it slowly to Officer Davis. His arrogant, powerful posture had completely vanished. He looked exactly like a frightened child caught doing something terrible. Officer Davis pressed the unlock button. The heavy rear hatch of the luxury SUV beeped twice. It opened slowly with a smooth mechanical hum. The officers approached the trunk carefully. The interior was lined with pristine white leather. Several expensive designer travel bags sat neatly inside the spacious cargo area. "Sir, I need you to recall your dog," Captain Miller said to Cole. "Ranger, here," Cole commanded firmly. The large dog immediately left the rear bumper. He returned directly to Cole's left side. Ranger sat down again, watching the police officers intently. His job was fully complete. Officer Davis began searching the trunk. He unzipped the first large designer bag. It held expensive clothes and shoes. He moved to the second bag. Then his trained eyes noticed something strange. The floorboard of the trunk seemed slightly elevated compared to standard factory models. He pulled back the thick luxury carpet lining. He found a hidden metal latch bolted directly into the steel frame. "Captain, I have a concealed compartment here," Officer Davis called out loudly. Julian let out a loud, panicked gasp. He turned around instantly and tried to run away through the crowd. He did not get very far at all. 2 police officers grabbed his arms immediately. They tackled him roughly to the hard cobblestones. They pinned him down exactly where Ranger had pinned him just minutes earlier. "Get off me!" Julian screamed frantically. "That is not mine. Someone planted that in my car? I have never seen that before in my life." Chloe watched the scene in absolute horror. "Julian, what did you do? What is hidden in our car?" Officer Davis pulled the metal latch firmly. A heavy panel lifted up. Inside the dark hidden compartment sat 5 large, tightly wrapped plastic bricks. White powder pressed firmly inside the clear, vacuum-sealed plastic. It was a massive quantity of highly illegal narcotics. The wealthy tech executive was not just an arrogant bully. He was actively trafficking illegal substances across state lines. Captain Miller looked at the heavy plastic bricks. He shook his head slowly in pure disgust. He pulled a pair of heavy steel handcuffs from his leather duty belt. "Julian Vance," Captain Miller said in a loud, commanding voice, "you're under arrest for the possession and transportation of a controlled substance. You're also under arrest for the assault of a civilian and resisting arrest. You have the right to remain silent." The officers pulled Julian up to his feet. They snapped the cold metal cuffs tightly around his wrists. His expensive gold watch clinked uselessly against the hard steel. He hung his head in absolute defeat. He cried openly, completely humiliated in front of the entire market. Another officer approached Chloe. "Ma'am, turn around and place your hands behind your back. You're under arrest for aggravated assault." "No!" Chloe shrieked wildly. She fought against the officer, twisting her body. "You cannot arrest me. I did not know anything about the drugs. I just slapped the old woman. Please do not put those dirty things on me. My dress is expensive silk." The officer ignored her loud protests. He secured the handcuffs tightly around her wrists. The wealthy couple, who had arrived acting like untouchable royalty, were now treated exactly like common criminals. The police escorted them firmly away from the cheering crowd. They pushed Julian and Chloe into the back of 2 separate patrol cars. The heavy doors slammed shut. The flashing red and blue lights reflected brightly off the brick buildings as the cars drove away toward the city jail. The large crowd watched them leave. Then a massive wave of loud applause broke out across the square. The people cheered wildly for the police. They cheered for Cole. And most of all, they cheered for the brave dog. Captain Miller walked back over to Cole. He reached out and shook the soldier's hand firmly. "Thank you for your service, son, both overseas and right here today. You handled this highly volatile situation with absolute professionalism." "Just protecting my family, Captain," Cole replied respectfully. The police officers finished taking photographs of the broken table and the spilled jam for official evidence. They cleared the busy scene and returned to their regular duties. The market slowly began to calm down. The heavy tension finally left the morning air. Cole turned his full attention back to Martha. She stood quietly near the wreckage of her small business. She looked down at the broken glass and the ruined fruit. A sad sigh escaped her lips. Cole knelt down on the sticky cobblestones. He completely ignored the ruined fabric of his jeans. He started picking up the large pieces of broken glass carefully with his bare hands. He threw them into a nearby trash bin. Tom, the vegetable farmer, walked over immediately. He brought a large straw broom and a heavy bucket of clean water. "Let me help you with that, Cole. You should not have to clean this mess up on your very first day home." Other local vendors stepped forward quickly as well. The young musician put down his acoustic guitar and started sweeping the sharp glass into a pile. A woman from the flower stall brought clean cotton towels to wipe away the sticky jam. The entire community rallied together to help Martha restore her space. They worked rapidly as a unified team. Within 30 minutes, the ground was entirely clean. The broken table pieces were thrown away. Tom brought a spare wooden folding table from his own stall and set it up firmly for Martha. Several vendors brought over fresh fruits and bright flowers to decorate the empty wooden surface. Martha stood in the very center of her new stall. Her eyes filled with warm, happy tears. She looked at her wonderful friends and her loyal neighbors. She felt an overwhelming sense of deep gratitude. She truly belonged here. Cole walked over and wrapped his strong arms around his mother. He hugged her tightly. He rested his chin on the top of her silver hair. He breathed in the familiar, comforting scent of sweet sugar and fresh fruit that always surrounded her. "I am so incredibly proud of you, Cole," Martha whispered softly into his chest. "You grew up to be a truly wonderful man." "I had an incredible mother to teach me," Cole smiled gently. He pulled back slightly and wiped a single tear from her cheek. "I bought this entire place for you, Mom. You never have to worry about anyone pushing you around ever again. This market is your permanent, safe home." Ranger walked up beside them. He sat down and leaned his heavy, warm body comfortably against Martha's leg. He wagged his thick tail slowly. He looked up at her with bright, highly intelligent eyes. Martha smiled brightly. She bent down and rubbed the large dog affectionately behind his ears. "And thank you, Ranger. You are a very brave and very good boy." The dog barked exactly once, a happy and fully contented sound. The morning sun shone brightly over the historic square. The lively, happy sounds of the weekend market returned completely. Children laughed loudly, the musicians started playing a cheerful tune again, and the busy vendors called out to their daily customers. The terrible incident was fully over. Justice had prevailed perfectly. Cole, Martha, and Ranger stood close together in the warm sunlight, finally at peace, exactly where they belonged. The story of Cole, Martha, and Ranger teaches us a powerful lesson about the true meaning of respect and authority. Wealth and social status do not give anyone the right to belittle or abuse others. True strength is not found in loud threats or expensive clothes. It is found in quiet discipline, deep love for family, and the courage to stand up against arrogance without losing your own integrity. From my perspective, the way we treat the hard-working, humble people in our community defines who we truly are. Watching a brave soldier defend his mother with such calm, unwavering authority reminds me that we must always protect our loved ones and remain grounded, no matter how much success we achieve in life. Arrogance will always fall, but genuine kindness and respect will always endure. May God bless you and your family with endless peace, divine protection, and the unwavering courage to always stand up for what is right. If you believe in the power of justice and family, please type Amen in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please share it with your friends and loved ones. Leave a comment to let us know your thoughts, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories of courage and humanity.